Leviticus 13. 1. The Lord spoke further to Moses and Aaron, saying, 2. When a man has in the skin of his flesh a swelling, or a boil, or a shiny spot, in the skin of his flesh like a plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priests. 3. And the priest shall examine the plague in the skin of the flesh. If the hair in the plague has turned white, and the plague appears deeper than the skin of your flesh, it is a plague of leprosy. The priest shall examine him and pronounce him unclean. 4. But if the spot in the skin of his flesh is white, and does not look deeper than the skin, and the hair has not turned white, then the priest shall shut up the one with the plague for 7 days. 5. And on the 7th day the priest shall examine him, and behold, if the plague, in his opinion, stopped, and in the skin it did not spread, then the priest shall shut him up for another 7 days. 6. And the priest shall examine him again on the 7th day, and behold, if the plague is collected, and it has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a pustule, and he shall wash his clothes, and he shall be clean. 7. But if the scab on the skin spreads greatly, after it was shown to the priest for his cleansing, it will be shown to the priest again. 8. And the priest shall examine him, and behold, if the scab is spread, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It's leprosy. 9. When a man has a plague of leprosy, he shall be brought to the priest. 10. And the priest shall examine him, and, behold, if there is a white swelling in the skin, which has turned the hair white, and there is raw flesh in the swelling. 11. Inveterate leprosy is in the skin of your flesh, therefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He will not shut him up, because he is unclean. 12. And if the leprosy spreads all over the skin, and the leprosy covers all the skin of the one who has the plague, from his head to his feet, as far as the eyes of the priest can see. 13. Then the priest shall examine, and, behold, if the leprosy has covered all his flesh, then shall he declare him that hath the plague clean. Everything became white, clean is. 14. But in the day that raw flesh appears in it, it will be unclean. 15. When the priest sees the raw flesh, he shall pronounce him unclean. The flesh is unclean, it's leprosy. 16. Or, making the flesh alive, and changing it white, then it shall come to the priest. 17. And he shall examine him, and behold, if the plague has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean that has the plague, clean is. 18. If also the flesh, on whose skin there is an ulcer, heals. 19. And, in place of the pustule, a white swelling or a shiny spot appears, except for the red one, then it will be shown to the priest. 20. And the priest shall examine, and behold, if it appears deeper than the skin, and his hair has turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy that broke out from the pustule. 21. And the priest, when he sees it, and, behold, if there is no white hair in it, nor is it deeper than the skin, but shrunken, then the priest shall shut him up for 7 days. 22. If it spreads greatly on the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean, plague is. 23. But if the spot stays in place, not spreading, the pustule is inflamed, the priest shall declare him clean. 24. Or when the skin of the flesh is burned by fire, and what is healed from the burning has a bright spot, except for red or white. 25. And the priest seeing her, and behold, if the hair in the spot has turned white and it appears deeper than the skin, it is leprosy, which has blossomed from the burn, therefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. 26. But if the priest, seeing it, and behold, if the spot does not appear white hair, nor is it deeper than the skin, but retracted, the priest shall shut him up for 7 days. 27. Then the priest shall examine him on the 7th day. If it has spread greatly in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. 28. But if the spot stays in its place, and on the skin it does not spread, but collects, swelling from the burn is, therefore the priest shall pronounce him clean, because inflammation is from the burn. 29. and when a man or woman has a sore on the head or beard. 30. And the priest, examining the sore, and, behold, if it appears deeper than the skin, and fine yellow hair is in it, the priest shall pronounce him unclean, it's ringworm, it's leprosy of the head or beard. 31. But if the priest, having examined the scabies plague, and, behold, if it does not appear deeper than the skin, and if there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall confine him who has the scabies plague for 7 days. 32. And the priest shall examine the plague on the 7th day, and behold, if the itch has not spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and the itch does not appear to be deeper than the skin. 33. Then he will shave himself, but he will not shave it, and the priest shall confine him a second time for 7 days. 34. Then the priest shall examine the itch on the 7th day, and behold, if the itch has not spread in the skin, and it does not appear deeper than the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his clothes, and he shall be clean. 35. But if it had, after it had been cleansed, if it had spread widely on the skin. 36. Then the priest shall examine him, and behold, if the scabies has spread in the skin, the priest shall not look for yellow hair, filthy is. 37. But, if the ringworm in your eyes has stopped, and black hair has grown on it, the ringworm is healthy, it is clean, therefore the priest shall pronounce him clean. 38. And when a man or woman has white lustrous spots on the skin of his flesh. 39. Then the priest will look, and, behold, if the skin of his flesh appears on the skin of his flesh, black and lustrous spots, it is imprint that has bloomed in the skin, it is clean. 40. And when a man's hair falls from his head, he is bald but clean. 41. And if the hair falls in front of the head, it is half bald, but it is clean. 42. However, if in the bald spot, or in the half-bald spot, there is a reddish-white plague, it is leprosy, blooming in his bald spot or half-bald spot. 43. So when the priest had examined, and behold, if the swelling of the plague in his bald head or half of his bald head is white beyond red, as leprosy appears on the skin of the flesh. 44. Leper is that man, filthy is he, the priest shall pronounce him utterly unclean, he has the plague on his head. 45. Also the garments of the leper, in whom the plague is, shall be torn, and his head shall be uncovered, and shall cover his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean. 46. All the days that the plague is in him, he shall be unclean, he is unclean, he shall dwell alone, his dwelling shall be outside the camp. 47. When also in any garment there is leprosy plague, in woolen garment, or in linen garment. 48. Or in warped yarn, or in woven yarn, whether of linen or wool, or of skins, or of any article of skins. 49. And the plague in the garment, or in the skin, or in the warped thread, or in the woven thread, or in anything of skin appears green or red, it is the plague of leprosy, therefore it shall be shown to the priest. 50. And the priest shall examine the plague, and he shall shut up that which has the plague for 7 days. 51. Then he shall examine the plague on the 7th day, if the plague has spread in the garment, or in the warped thread, or in the woven thread, or in the skin, for any work that is made of the skin, it is a gnawing leprosy, it is unclean. 52. Therefore, that garment, or warp yarn, or yarn woven from wool, or from linen, or from any work of skin, in which there is the plague, shall be burned, because it is a gnawing leprosy, with fire it will be burned. 53. But when the priest saw, and, behold, if the plague had not spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the fabric, or in any piece of skin. 54. Then the priest shall order the thing in which the plague was to be washed, and he shall shut it up a second time for 7 days. 55. And the priest, examining the plague, after it has been washed away, and behold, if it has not changed its appearance, nor spread, it is unclean, you will burn it with fire, pervasive plague it is, whether within or without. 56. But if the priest finds that the plague has collected after washing, then he shall tear it from the garment, or from the skin, or from the warp or woven thread. 57. And if it still appears on the garment, or the woven thread or anything of skin, it is breaking out leprosy. With fire thou shalt burn that in which the plague is. 58. But the garment, or warp or woof, or anything of skin, which you wash, and from which the plague is removed, shall be washed a second time, and it shall be clean. 59. This is the law of the plague of leprosy in clothing of wool, or linen, or woof, or anything made of skin, to declare it clean, or to declare it unclean. Leviticus 14. 1. Afterward the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, 2. This shall be the law of the leper on the day of his purification, he shall be brought to the priest. 3. And the priest shall go out without the camp, and shall examine it, and, behold, if the leper's plague be healed. 4. Then the priest shall command that for the one who is to be cleansed, 2 live and clean birds are to be taken, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. 5. The priest shall also command that a bird be slaughtered in an earthen vessel over running water. 6. And he shall take the living bird, and the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and dip them, with the living bird, in the blood of the bird that was slain over the running waters. 7. And he shall sprinkle him that is to be cleansed of leprosy 7 times, then he shall declare him clean, and let the living bird loose upon the face of the field. 8. And he that is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, and shave off all his hair, and wash himself with water, so shall it be clean, and afterward he shall come into the camp, but shall remain outside his tent 7 days. 9. And it shall come to pass, that on the 7th day he shall shave off all his hair, his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, he shall shave off all his hair, and he shall wash his clothes, and he shall wash his flesh with water, and he shall be clean. 10. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, and 1 female lamb a year old without blemish, and 3 tithes of fine flour for a food offering, mixed with oil, and a log of oil. 11. And the priest who purifies himself shall present the man who is to be purified with these things before the Lord at the door of the tent of meeting. 12. And the priest shall take 1 of the lambs, and offer it for a trespass offering, and the log of oil, and he shall offer them for a wave offering before the Lord. 13. Then he shall kill the lamb in the place where the sin offering and the burnt offering are killed, in the holy place, because both the trespass offering and the sin offering are for the priest, most holy thing it is. 14. And the priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and shall put it on the lobe of the right ear of him that is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. 15. Also the priest shall take from the log of oil, and shall pour it into the palm of his own left hand. 16. Then the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and sprinkle the oil with his finger 7 times before the Lord. 17. And the rest of the oil that is in his hand, the priest shall put on the lobe of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, and upon the blood of the guilt offering. 18. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand, he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed, so shall the priest make atonement for him before the Lord. 19. The priest also shall make atonement for sin, and shall make atonement for him that is to be cleansed from his filthiness, and afterward he will slay the burnt offering. 20. And the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the meat offering upon the altar, so the priest will make atonement for him, and he will be clean. 21. But if he is poor and there is not enough in his hand, he shall take a lamb for a trespass offering for a wave offering to make atonement for him, and a tithe of fine flour mixed with oil for a food offering, and a log of olive oil. 22. And 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, according to his ability, of which one shall be for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. 23. And on the 8th day of her purification she shall bring them to the priest, at the door of the tent of meeting, before the Lord. 24. And the priest shall take the guilt offering lamb, and the log of oil, and offer them for a wave offering before the Lord. 25. Then he shall slaughter the guilt offering lamb, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the thumb of your right foot. 26. Also the priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand. 27. Then the priest shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand, 7 times before the Lord. 28. And the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, in place of the blood of the guilt offering. 29. And what remains of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. 30. Then he will offer one of the turtle doves or one of the young pigeons, according to his possessions. 31. Yes, according to his possessions, one shall be for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering with the food offering, and so shall the priest make atonement for him that is to be purified before the Lord. 32. This is the law of him in whom the plague of leprosy is, whose possessions do not allow him due for purification. 33. The Lord spoke further to Moses and Aaron, saying, 34. When you enter the land of Canaan, which I will give you as a possession, and I send the plague of leprosy into any house in the land of your possession. 35. Then whoever owns the house shall come and report to the priest, saying, It seems to me that there is a plague in my house. 36. And the priest shall command the house to be vacated, before he goes in to examine the plague, that all that is in the house may not be defiled, and afterward the priest shall come in to examine the house. 37. And when I see the plague, and behold, if it is in the walls of the house in green or red dimples, and they seem to be deeper than the wall. 38. Then the priest will go out of the house to the outside of the door and close it for 7 days. 39. Then on the 7th day the priest shall return and examine, and if you see that the plague on the walls of the house has spread. 40. Then the priest will order them to pull out the stones on which the plague is and to throw them outside the city in an unclean place. 41. And he shall have the house scraped inside all around, and the dust which they have scraped shall be cast outside the city into an unclean place. 42. Then they will take other stones and put them in place of the first stones, and other clay will be taken, and the house will be daubed. 43. But if the plague breaks out again in the house, after the stones have been uprooted and the house scraped and plastered again. 44. Then the priest shall go in and examine whether the plague has spread in the house, whether there is gnawing leprosy in the house, filthy is. 45. Therefore shall the house, its stones, and its wood, and all the clay of the house be thrown down, and he will be taken out of the city to an unclean place. 46. And whoever enters that house, on any day that it is closed, will be unclean until evening. 47. Also he who lies down to sleep in such a house shall wash his clothes, and what he eats in such a house will wash his clothes. 48. However, when the priest goes back into the house and examines it, if the plague has not spread, after the house has been plastered, the priest will declare it clean, because the plague is cured. 49. Afterwards he shall take, to atone for the house, 2 birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. 50. And he shall slay a bird in an earthen vessel overflowing waters. 51. Then he shall take cedar wood, and the hyssop, and the scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird and in running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. 52. So he shall atone for that house with the blood of the bird, and with the flowing waters, and with the living bird, and with the cedar wood, and with the hyssop, and with the scarlet. 53. Then he will release the living bird outside the city, over the face of the field, so he will make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. 54. This is the law of every plague of leprosy and ringworm. 55. And from the leprosy of clothes, and from houses. 56. And the swelling, and the boils, and the shiny spots. 57. To teach when something will be unclean, and when it will be clean. This is the law of leprosy. Leviticus 15. 1. The Lord spoke more to Moses and Aaron, saying, 2. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, Any man that hath an issue from his flesh shall be unclean because of his issue. 3. This, then, shall be his uncleanness, because of his issue. If his flesh uses his issue, or if his flesh stops his issue, this is his uncleanness. 4. Every bed on which a person with a discharge lies will be unclean, and whatever it sits on will be unclean. 5. And whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. 6. And whoever sits on what the one with the issue sat on, shall wash his clothes, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. 7. And he that touches the flesh of him that hath the issue shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until evening. 8. When also he that has the discharge spit on a clean man, then shall he wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until evening. 9. Also every saddle on which the one with the discharge rides will be unclean. 10. And whoever touches anything that has been under him will be unclean until evening, and he who takes it shall wash his clothes, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. 11. Also everyone who has the issue touches, without having washed his hands with water, shall wash his clothes, and bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. 12. And the earthen vessel that touches the one with the issue will be broken, however, the whole wooden vessel shall be washed with water. 13. When therefore he that has the discharge is clean from his discharge, 7 days shall be counted for his purification, and he shall wash his clothes, and bathe his flesh in running water, and it will be clean. 14. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and come before the Lord, to the door of the tent of meeting, and shall give them to the priest. 15. And the priest shall offer one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, and so shall the priest make atonement for him before the Lord for his discharge. 16. Also the man, when the semen of copulation comes out of him, all his flesh shall bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. 17. Also all clothing, and all skin on which there is semen of intercourse, shall be washed with water, and shall be unclean until evening. 18. Also, if a man lies with a woman and has emission of semen, they shall both bathe in water and be unclean until evening. 19. But a woman, when she has a discharge, and her flow of blood is in her flesh, shall be 7 days in her separation, and whosoever toucheth her shall be unclean until the evening. 20. And whatever she lies on during her separation will be unclean, and whatever it sits on will be unclean. 21. And whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself with water, and be unclean until evening. 22. And whoever touches anything on which it sits shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself with water, and be unclean until evening. 23. If he also touches anything that is on the bed or on what she has sat on, he will be unclean until evening. 24. And if any man lies with her, and her uncleanness is upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days, also every bed on which he lies will be unclean. 25. Also a woman, if she has an issue of her blood for many days outside the time of her separation, or if she has an issue of blood longer than her separation, shall be unclean all the days of the issue of her uncleanness, as in us. Days of their separation. 26. Every bed on which he lies every day of his discharge will be like the bed of his separation, and everything upon which he sits shall be unclean, according to the filth of his separation. 27. and whoever touches it will be unclean. Therefore he shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself with water, and be unclean until evening. 28. But when she is cleansed of her issue, then 7 days shall be counted, and after that she shall be cleansed. 29. And on the 8th day she shall take 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest at the door of the tent of meeting. 30. Then the priest shall offer one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering, and the priest shall make atonement for her unclean discharge before the Lord. 31. Thus shall ye separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, that they not die in their uncleanness, by defiling my tabernacle which is among them. 32. This is the law of him who has the issue, and of him from whom the semen of copulation proceeds, and who is made unclean by them. 33. As also of the woman sick in her separation, and of him that suffereth from her issue, whether male or female, and of the man that lies with an unclean woman.